okay? There's one. One okay? One yes? Okay. Let's get this out there now. This is church. It's not a mausoleum. All right? It is okay to interact. It's okay to even smile. Jesus will not get you for smiling, I promise you. Regardless of what we were brought up. You know, when I moved in church, you know, what I always got when I was like in the third grade, I think it was. I think the last time I went before I was high school. If you nodded off, come here, Corey. I'll show you what my dad did to me. This is fun. Because he would sit like this, right? And I would lay on my dad's shoulder like that, and if I would start to wiggle or something, you know those sideburns right there? Yeah, he'd pull those all the time. Does that feel good?
No.
Doesn't feel good? Well, then behave and sit there. This is a place we can actually interact and talk, have conversation, have thoughts go through our brains about God, ways we can improve our relationship with God, how we can improve the things that we do, the values that we value in life, the way that we can kind of share life. One of the words that we like to use is just trying to keep our life real. Because when I grew up, there was a certain way you're supposed to look when you're a Christian. Remember those ways? You go carry your Bible like this. You had the shiny teeth. You had the tie and the coat and stuff like that. So we kept everything that we did wrong hidden from everybody else. We kept that at house, right? And then we just kind of push that away and don't deal with it. So when we deal with our issues, we deal with it inappropriately at home, right? Or at the workspace or wherever you're supposed to be. And so what we're trying to do is just kind of get ourselves out there and say, you know, I'm not perfect. I know it's a shock, but neither are you. We all have our flaws, right? We all have our issues. I mean, even before this day is over, you're going to get frustrated with something or somebody. You can be tempted or do something that you should ought not to be doing. And that's just the way life is. So if you keep it real, it makes it a whole lot easier for us to deal with it on another level. And that's kind of what we're talking about this whole month when we deal with something as drastic as Suicide Prevention Month. I'm thankful for the city of Weatherford for indoctrinating this month of September as this month. But if you're really honest about the issues that we deal with every day, it was the same type of issues that Jesus dealt with in his day. It's not different. The only difference is we just avoid reading those things that make us feel uncomfortable, just like we avoid talking about those things that make us feel uncomfortable, right? Because if we talk about things that are uncomfortable, then it starts to stir us up emotionally. We don't want to feel sad. We don't want to cry. We don't want to feel pain. We don't want to resent our past. So we just kind of ignore it, move on to the next one, and see what happens, but we never really deal with it in an honest way. And so we're going to deal with some stuff because that's exactly what Jesus dealt with. You know, one of my favorite stories, seems like I say that every Sunday, is Matthew 12. It's a courageous story of Jesus walking into a synagogue. It was the Sabbath. And if you know anything about the Sabbath, back in the good old days, it was a day that was strictly set aside for God. That's it. God and things of God, bless you, right? But also, it was a thing that you restrained from work. Just like we do today, right? Well, maybe not. It's something that we do. And that's what the Sabbath is all about. Except when you define the word work, it kind of, I think, is a better word to define the word work there, just restrain from that, is any type of effort. No pushing, pulling, cleaning, no working, no farming, no doing cattle, no even washing dishes or cooking for that matter. Everything had to be prepared all for the Sabbath, so all you got to do was just spend time doing the things of God. But also you throw in there was healing and curing people, right? That was a no-no. So when Jesus goes into the synagogue, there's a man there with a withered hand. Pretty messed up. I think it was kind of a plant in my mind. Because the next thing you hear about this story is that the religious leaders, right, they're kind of watching what's going on. Because they know what Jesus is going to do. He's going to work on the Sabbath and try to fix this guy. That's what Jesus always did. So what do you do with a guy like that? You kill him, right? You don't want that messing up our religion. And so that's kind of what was happening. And so he goes and he sees this man, and all of a sudden this voice from a Pharisee comes from the outside. So, Jesus, is it lawful to cure a man? Well, good question, wasn't it? The obvious answer, according to the law, is what? It is not lawful. Absolutely, it is not lawful. So what did Jesus do? Well, the church leaders say don't do it, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch the Cowboys. Because the pregame show's coming on before the Sabbath, so I get to watch that at least, right? Not what he did, was it? If he did that, he probably would have lived longer. But he chose to make a bigger statement. And the statement was that of grace. So what is a big deal to heal someone on the Sabbath? Y'all understand the implications of that at all? If you look around us and you see people who have physical setbacks, mental setbacks, emotional setbacks, anything that they may call as some type of a disability, how do you explain that in those days? One, genetics. You explain it by simply saying, you have that because God is punishing you for some sin that you have committed or something that your parents have done. So you sit there and you isolate yourself from the rest of the religious community. Why? Because you don't mess with someone who's just been put in timeout. Does anybody mess with your sibling when they're in timeout? Yeah? What was that like? Did you hear the wrath from above? Don't you touch her. Right? Because what happens when you do that is that all of a sudden you become unclean and you just might as well join the party of those who are isolated from God. You isolate yourself from God, you'll isolate yourself from all hope. And that was just the way that it was back then. So it came to the point where the church becomes smaller and the people who are broken become larger. And you know what happens whenever Jesus walks the earth? That should tell us a little bit of something right there. What do you think he's saying? Something really has to be messed up in the world for the one who runs the universe brings somebody down here to fix it because they're too stubborn to listen to the prophets who they killed off. You know something's not right when God has to send God's own son in flesh and bone. But as yet, that's what he did. And so Jesus came to make a louder statement that this person who has a withered hand is not loss of hope, is not being punished by God, because we don't worship that kind of a God who causes affliction on people. We worship a God of hope, a God of grace, a God who created us in God's image, a beautiful God. And so what did Jesus do? We'll kind of read the story. Now, this is Jesus' words, talking to the Pharisees. Suppose one of you has only one sheep, and that one sheep falls into the pit on the Sabbath. Would you not lay hold of it and lift it out? That would be working. Of course they would, because we know how the leadership works. There's rules we follow, but then there's our own rules that we don't have to follow, right? And so Jesus goes on, how much more valuable is a human being than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath because why? God is good. And then he stretched out the man's hand and he restored it, just as sound as the other one. But the Pharisees went out and they conspired against him. How dare he break our rules? We've been doing that forever. So now they want to destroy him. So when Jesus became aware of this, he departed, and many crowds followed him, and he cured all of them on the Sabbath, mind you. And then he ordered them not to be made known. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the prophet Isaiah. So listen to these words the prophet speaks, because this tells you who Jesus is and who we are called to be. It says this: "Here is my servant." You can insert Jesus in here. You can insert your own name in here. "Whom I have chosen, my beloved, with whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles." Who are the Gentiles? Anybody who's not a Jew. You know how that works, right? There's two types of people in our country, right? Texans and ain't Texans, right? All right, same thing there. There's Jews, and there ain't Jews, Gentiles. So he comes, and he proclaims justice to the Gentiles. He will not wrangle or cry aloud, nor will he or anyone hear his voice in the streets. He will not break or bruise a reed or quench a smoldering wick until he brings justice to victory. And his name to the Gentiles will be what? Hope. Powerful word, hope. You know what it's like to live in hope? Have you ever met anybody that has no hope? That does not live in hope. So here is this man who the withered hand had been separated from God, separated from his community of faith, who lived without hope. And that is the one that Jesus came. Not only just to heal him physically, but restore his life back into the love of God. To restore hope again, so that he can move forward in life. We are a people of hope. This month we've been talking about something that's a very difficult topic to talk about: suicide prevention, suicide awareness. And I've learned a great deal this month, thanks to the Salmons, who really said, hey, we really need to step up and do some things on this. And so we've taken a hard look at it. And to hear people's stories about what they have gone through, what they're going through, is very, very humbling. And it brings up a lot of emotion. It does. Last week we listened to a story of a guy who failed twice to end his life. And he talked about why he did that, why he believed he had to do that, no other choice to do that. And incidentally, y'all remember the old ways of dealing with suicide from the church? Remember that? What was this church's lesson on suicide? You'll go to hell. You know, that's a loving thing, isn't it? You do that, you're going to go to hell. Okay, well, I just don't do it then, right? And so that's kind of how our approach is that. So how much, when someone does take their own life, how much guilt do you think is reaped upon the family? It makes no sense. Completely uncompassionate. And so here is somebody who has talked about his understanding of why he did what he felt like he had to do. And that was from somebody who did this on TED Talks. The next 3 weeks, we're going to talk and hear stories from our own people. Because something like this happens all the time. And because we have that good-looking Christian look, toting the Bible and walk around like this, you know, carry the cross with us and have no problems, we don't realize we're real people with real issues. And worst thing, we feel like we have to hide them, even from each other. So I want you to listen to Shelby's story. She is our youth minister who has had a long journey in her life to reach the point where she is today by the grace of God. Let's listen to her story.
I was 23. I was living on my own for the first time. and I had just landed a stable job at a hair salon. To most of my friends, it seemed like everything was good. And even some of them had expressed to me how proud they were of me for coming such a long way in such a short period of time. It was only a year and a half earlier at that point that I was admitted to Millwood Hospital. I was in Millwood for 11 days, and every day they would send you in to see a psychiatrist to make sure everything was all right, and I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. After leaving the hospital and going into therapy, I had later learned through a psychologist exactly what that meant, which was that my brain doesn't produce the necessary chemicals in order to be happy. Just plain and simple, they're not there. And I found out that I was going to have to take antidepressants for the rest of my life. And those medications were going to help me, or try to help me, experience a little bit of happiness. My therapist had also told me that she felt like I was self-medicating myself, and maybe even subconsciously, without knowing it, I was doing drugs and taking the pills I was taking only to make myself feel better. And that made a little sense to me at the time. That felt good, getting the definition, knowing what was going on, because I had always felt like this, but I never knew what to call it. And I never knew how to explain how I felt. I just knew I felt different than most other people seemed. And now it seemed like I had this hope of gaining a better life and maybe achieving something that everyone else has that I've never been able to have. So, because I had that hope, I put my head down. I worked hard. I did everything I was supposed to do. I took my medicine every day. I went to work every day. And I made sure I made every therapy appointment. I made sure that I went to every doctor's appointment. And I did everything I was supposed to do. And I just came to this realization that I've done everything I am supposed to do to be this independent member of society, functioning on my own, doing what I'm supposed to. I'm no longer doing drugs. I'm on the right path, and I am no better for it. I am miserable, and it doesn't matter what I do. But I think more than sad at that moment, I was angry that I did everything I was supposed to. But it didn't help. And as my anger slowly faded away, back came the depression. And when that took its place is when everything started going sideways. Because after making this realization in anger, now came this point where I'm just crushed by my depression, and the only thing I can think about is it doesn't matter what I do. I'll always be miserable. And I just realized how emotionally exhausted I was. And I thought, there's no point to any of this. And I started thinking about all of these things about my life. I started telling myself that I wasn't good. I wasn't good enough. I would never be successful. I would never be happy. I would live a long, horrible, miserable life, and it wasn't worth it. So I just made the decision that I didn't want to live anymore. And coming to that decision wasn't scary. It was just a fact. I didn't want to be here, and so I just wasn't going to anymore. But I knew, because there are people that I love dearly, that I had some things to wrap up first. So I thought about what I would do, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just spend some time with each person that I love and make sure that they know I love them. And then I'll write them all letters, and I'll let them know why this was necessary, that it wasn't their fault, that they didn't have anything to do with it. It just, I can't do this. And it was after that, kind of made up my mind. I felt like this is a good place to be, and just walked into my bedroom and was going to get ready to go to sleep for the night when all of a sudden I just dropped to my knees. Every muscle in my body was almost unmovable, and the feeling is really hard to explain, because more than anything it was just overwhelming. And I think the important thing to know here is that 90% of the time at this point I was completely numb to emotions. I had spent so long pushing everything I felt away that it was really hard to put a name to any emotions that I had and to feel them. Suddenly, here I am, brought to my knees, and I feel every emotion in the book. I feel happiness, I feel sadness, I feel joy, I'm excited, but I'm also like calm and peaceful, just everything, all at once. It's like they all come rushing back. And then I just started feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. This is how sad people will be. This is what you're making others feel. And then I just felt love, just love at its purest form. Like, if you've ever loved someone with every ounce of your heart, that you literally feel like you could just take it out and give it to them because that's the only way you can express how much you love them. I felt that. And I didn't understand who was feeling this, because I didn't feel this way about it. I felt like that was my best decision. That was my best option. So who's feeling this, you know? And then I feel it again, and this one felt more personal. All the same, the dread, the sadness, you know, the love. And at the end of that, I hear my mom's voice say that I love you and I will never leave you. And that was something that my mom told me over and over again as a child. And that's when I knew that second set of emotions were what she would be feeling after I was gone. After that realization, it went away. And I'm left there on my bedroom floor, just in tears, because I couldn't tell you the last time I felt that kind of emotion. And yet here it all is. I came to the decision that that was God. That was God stepping in and saying, don't do this. Like, you're not done. I know you're not done. So don't give up. And so I just decided that I needed to hold on for just a little longer, because something's important enough that I need to hold on. Again, time went on. I couldn't get this experience out of my head. I was constantly thinking about God and his role in my life and wondering what it all meant. And spending time, I think, thinking about it just opened this box of curiosity inside my head, as saying, like, maybe I need to go back to church. Maybe I need to spend some time and investigate this a little more. And it was months after that thought that I finally did come back. And it, at that point, had been 7 years since I had stepped foot in this building. And it was different, but I had a new outlook on why I was there, and a new reason for being there, just in general. And also with an understanding that God is absolutely real. No questioning anymore. No, maybe this or maybe that. It was real to me. I'm now 28. I still struggle with major depressive disorder. From time to time, I still battle with suicidal thoughts. But the difference is, now I usually know if I get to that desperate point, all I have to do is walk into the living room where my mom usually is and just say, I need help. And she knows what to do. She's on it. Because she knows me well enough to know that at that moment, I'm unable to see all of this hope that's surrounding me. And she knows how to help me to the point of maybe seeing just a little bit of it. And once I get that first glimpse, everything else starts showing up. I've been able to build a relationship with God, which has really strengthened it's strengthened me mentally, because I know that no matter what I'm feeling, where I'm at, who's there or who isn't there, he loves me no matter what. And he always will. And there's nothing anyone can say or do that's going to change that. And he loves me as I am. I'm weird, I'm quirky, I am overly honest. He doesn't care. And I have built an awesome church family that anything I needed, they would be there. And I really feel like God helped push me to getting to a place where I can thrive. And now I just hope that going through this experience and living this, that by telling my story, I'm able to help someone else find that little bit of hope.
Good stuff. Kind of hard stuff, isn't it? Really give her a lot of praise for sharing that and those experiences. I've been around her for a long time. I remember the little 7-year period she took off and never really thought twice about it, other than, get out of high school and you take off. but she was going through some struggles, and now we're able to talk through some of that. And the one thing that I heard from her story is, you know, when you get out of high school, you have these great dreams of, you know, I'm going to go to college or whatever, I'm going to be a job and make my millions in the first 6 months and start accumulating all sorts of things that I can't build enough houses or sheds to put all my stuff in there, and I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. From what I listened to her was that she went on that path, and her depression got worse because all those things that she valued did not do anything for her, did not prevent her from feeling depression. And it wasn't until she realized that all those things didn't matter. What really matters is finding that hope that is found in Christ, because the hope that she found wasn't in what she had, but in who she was. And that there was a vision for God, and there's a way of which we can move in the direction of God in spite of all the things that we have that anchor us down, that we can constantly move forward, because that's the way that God is. God believes in us. God restores our life. God gives us a vision for life. God gives us a purpose for living, a direction. And when we get on that and move in the direction of God, that there are ways that we can overcome what obstacles that we have. We can pray all day, Lord, get rid of my depression. Lord, get rid of this, get rid of that. And God will say, no. My grace is sufficient enough. Just think what you can accomplish if your depression, if your flaws do not define who you are, but your ability to move beyond where you are today to where I need you to be in spite of what we have. That's how God's grace works in our lives. And that is why we come to worship in this place, is to be remembering who this God is that we worship. We're not here to see how fancy we can look or how religious we can appear to people. We're here to figure out what it is God is trying to get us to do in spite of the things that we have within us that prevents us from moving where we need to be. Because there's a mountain out there that's called fulfillment, and we need to climb it. But the only way we can do that is to get on the back of Christ and climb that mountain together. One more thing. This table behind me is an amazing piece of furniture, actually. It was not even crafted by a person live at the church, but you know, if you think about the power of this table, we do this every Sunday, so sometimes it just becomes another thing we got to do, right, to get out of worship. But I want us to think about this table for a minute and the power behind it, because this is an opportunity that Christ has given to us. This is what God has set up before us. We aren't doing this. This is what God has done. God invites all of us, all of our flaws, all of our weaknesses, and says, come, I want to dine with my family. And we find more reasons not to. Well, I'm not good enough. I've committed too many sins. I've done too many. Let me get myself together, Lord, right? That always happens. Before I come before you. This is why we come here, because we don't have it together. And God invites us anyway and says, my grace is sufficient. I want you to come, and I want to share this meal with you, because I want you to be empowered to do the very things that I have already done. And you can do it even better. So a meal has been prepared for every one of us. Put aside all of our faults and not allow those to define who we are, but to allow this person, this Christ, to take them, to use them, to empower us to be the people we need to be. Because there's so many people out there that do not have hope, that we can reach them with the message that Christ gives all of us. So I want us to share this meal together. I also want to share our offerings with one another, because we also support the ministry of Jesus Christ, the gifts that we bring. Let's prepare for this table. Let us pray. We are thankful, God, that you come to us in such mysterious ways. What you have done for us, we really wouldn't dare do for others. We just don't trust enough. But yet here we are in all that we are. And all those hidden sins and all those problems and issues we carry deep within us, we can't seem to release them because we don't trust, because we're ashamed, because they hurt us so much that we just don't want to address them. that you take them from us anyway, just as we are, and reminding us that we are created in your image, not physically, not mentally, but spiritually. We are connected to you like none other. You define our very being, our very purpose for living. You instill us with strength and courage to move on in our days that we do not feel like getting out of bed. You empower us with your body. With our brothers and sisters. Who suffer with us. As your suffering servants, we come to your table, seeking to be healed, but more importantly, that we can feel empowered to go and heal with the hope that you put in our hearts. Guide us this day and the many, many days ahead.